It all began on a bright morning when Adrienne walked into his spotless kitchen after finishing a business call, expecting everything to be as perfect as always. But a faint, unusual sound caught his attention, the soft scrape of a fork against a plate. Curious, he followed it, thinking it might be a staff member preparing breakfast. Instead, he froze. Behind the dining table, crouched on the floor, was Isla, his young maid, quietly eating leftovers from the previous night. She wasn't sitting at the table, not even using proper cutlery, just taking small, hurried bites, as if terrified someone might see her. The sight stunned him. A man who owned everything stood there helpless, watching someone hide just to eat discarded food. In that moment, something shifted inside him, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. And that silent moment became the beginning of everything that followed. Adrian tried to continue with his day as if nothing had happened, but the image of Isla eating in fear wouldn't leave his mind. It followed him into meetings, into his quiet office, even into the silence of his luxurious home. For years, he had built walls around himself, walls made of routines, deadlines, and an obsession with success. Feelings were distractions, and empathy was something he had slowly trained himself to ignore. But now, a single moment had cracked that cold exterior. He found himself wondering when he had stopped noticing people, when he had forgotten what it felt like to struggle. Ila's trembling hands reminded him of a younger version of himself, hungry, uncertain, quietly hoping for a better day. He realized that somewhere along the journey to wealth, he had lost touch with the humanity that once guided him. And that realization was the first spark of change. Over the next few days, Adrian quietly observed Isla, trying to understand the weight she carried behind her quiet smile. She always took the smallest portions from the staff meals, sometimes skipping food altogether, pretending she wasn't hungry. Her movements were careful, almost rehearsed, as if she lived in constant fear of doing something wrong. Curious but cautious, Adrian finally asked the head housekeeper about her situation, and what he learned struck him deeply. Isla wasn't careless or unfocused. She was exhausted. Nearly all of her earnings were sent back to her village to care for her sick mother and young brother. She kept almost nothing for herself, choosing their survival over her own comfort. Suddenly, everything made sense. The hiding, the rushed bites, the hollow eyes. She wasn't just surviving. She was sacrificing silently, without expecting anyone to notice. And that truth made her struggle impossible for him to ignore. The next week, Adrian walked into the dining area with a decision already forming in his mind, one that felt unfamiliar but undeniably right. He gathered his household staff, their faces a mixture of confusion and nervous anticipation, and he spoke with a steady calm they weren't used to hearing. He told them that from that day forward, everyone in the house would share meals in the main dining room. No more leftovers in corners. No more separation between those who served and the man they served. For a moment, the room was silent. Some were unsure how to react. Others exchanged surprised glances. But none were more stunned than Ela. Adrian saw her eyes widen, as if she couldn't understand why someone of his status would make such a change. But to him, it was simple. Dignity shouldn't depend on wealth or position. And with that decision, the atmosphere of the entire house began to shift. For a few weeks later, Adrian asked Isla to meet him in his study, and she stepped inside with the same cautious expression she always carried. as if preparing herself for bad news. But this time, there was no reprimand, no instructions, just a quiet envelope resting on the edge of his desk. When he handed it to her, her hands trembled slightly, unsure of what to expect. Inside, she found documents she could barely process at first: a full educational scholarship for her brother, medical support for her mother, and a plan that would finally lift the burden she had been carrying alone for so long. Ila's eyes filled with tears, her voice so soft it almost disappeared as she tried to speak. Adrian simply told her that someone who spends their life helping others deserves help too. For the first time, she let herself believe that kindness could reach her as well. And in that moment, both of their lives quietly changed direction. In the months that followed, the mansion slowly transformed into something warmer, something more human. Adrian found himself staying longer at the dining table, listening to stories he had never taken the time to hear before. The quiet formality that once filled the house was replaced by soft laughter, shared meals, and a feeling of belonging that surprised even him. Isla, freed from the weight she had carried for years, began to smile genuinely, her steps lighter, her eyes brighter. Watching her rebuild her life stirred something even deeper in Adrian, pushing him to look beyond his home. He started visiting shelters, sponsoring meals, helping people who reminded him of the struggle he once ignored. And in giving quietly, without recognition, he discovered a peace he had never found in wealth. He finally understood that real richness isn't measured in money, but in the lives you uplift along the way.